Well, here we go again, and I'm here to tell you, I always warn you, be careful of what you see and listen and hear on social media.
What happens if you just don't pay your taxes to protest the Trump administration?
All right, it's time to stop paying federal taxes, and you can do this shit fucking legally. Go to your HR department and tell them to stop withholding federal fucking taxes.
Okay. I personally checked into this, and I have the answer for you. And it's pretty cut and dry. But you'll be amazed, actually, that you can do this. Now, question comes to mind. You ever see horses and monkeys and dogs on movies and television shows? I wonder if they personally have to pay their taxes. Think about that for a moment.
Then you're going to come down to the bottom here. I'm not paying federal taxes. And there's a lot of people just like me because we've realized the system's a scam. And every single day I get the same question. How do I do it? Well, if you're self-employed, it's pretty simple. Just stop paying your quarterly taxes. If you're not self-employed and you work for a company, you're going to need to fill out a new W-4. You'll fill out the first section, your first and last name, your street, your city and state, your social security number. Then you're going to come down to the bottom here to section 4C. You're going to write exempt underneath the box, not in the box. Leave everything else blank. Then sign and date here, and you'll turn that into payroll or HR. Then I would take the money you save in taxes and put it into a high-yield savings account. We're not trying to commit tax fraud. We are conscientiously objecting to the fact that criminals run the system.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting it is. Just a thought. Picture a squirrel coming home to his tree, and Mrs. Squirrel is like, well, how's your day been? And he's like, well, it's nuts, They made us work the whole day, and we didn't even get a break, and the whole day I'm, just breaking my nuts. Before you believe anybody on social media, always do the legwork and check out what the specifics are here, because it's not as cut and dry as what they're making it out. Now, this next one, I've checked into this site, and I'm here to tell you. I'll tell you after.
What is that like to be investigated by the IRS?
To me, it's like investigate me for murder, rape. I've not done any of those things or not filed or paid any taxes that by law I'm required to pay. I'm not, and neither is the people of the 50 states required by law to pay federal income or payroll or self-employment or estate taxes, even gambling and gun manufacturing taxes. The way the law is written is to be completely constitutional where it applies. The income tax law back in 1913 was written to apply only to Washington, D.C. and her territories. Because otherwise it would violate the requirement in the U.S. Constitution that direct taxes must be divided up amongst the states.
That is something that I did not know. Probably hardly anyone knows this. The tax code is written to tax people who live in the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C., not the 50 states. And I think that's one of the most shocking facts I learned on your website. I was like, what? This is crazy. Well, your website is filled with a lot of great information, but I didn't know that. And then I looked it up, and sure enough, it's true. So tell us, how does that work? Because I think that's what's confusing for most people.
When we talked last time, Marjorie, all I invited you to do was to verify for yourself with your eyes, ears, and brain that what I'm telling you is the truth. So people need to go to stopthefed.com and just verify everything for themselves. That's number one.
Now, a lot of people are asking, though, my employer withholds my taxes out of my paycheck. What do people do about that?
It's very simple. If they go to our website, stopthefed.com, there is a page there on how to fill out the proper paperwork. Give it to your employer to legally stop your employer from stealing a portion of your wages and giving it to the IRS. Without that, you're forced to file a 1040 income tax confession form to get a little bit of that stolen money back.
I like how you call it a confession form. Have they ever had to fight their employer over this issue?
Just tell the employer to follow the law.
Are they breaking the law by not withholding taxes from an employee's paycheck?
Not at all. In fact, no employer in the 50 United States by law is required to withhold any income or FICA or federal payroll taxes for the employee's paycheck. Free your people. Do not steal from your employees.
Okay. Now, the fact that I have to point this out is you just watched a short infomercial, okay? We got somebody who used to work for the government, and we got somebody promoting their website and their books, okay? That had nothing to do with the fact of not paying your taxes. That was simply she got paid to be the host, and he is selling a product, okay? It always kills me watching social media, and especially YouTube, that the people who are advertising have made their commercials like I'm talking to you, but when in fact I'm selling a product to you. I checked into this site. Now, when we get to the end here, I'll fill you in on a couple things, okay? Oh, yet, you ever wonder if gas pumps could, talk to you? You roll on in there, you open up your door, you grab the gas pump, open up your gas cap, and the gas pump goes, "Are you sure you can afford that today, champ?" No.
It's absolutely up to you if you pay taxes throughout the year. What you can do this week, you can go to your HR department and you can tell them straight up, I do not want to withhold any more federal taxes throughout the year. Can you please give me the forms that I need to sign to adjust my withholding so that my federal tax withholding is set to 0? A lot of people in the comments will say, well, what's the difference? You're just going to end up paying the government a big lump sum of cash at the end of the year. Maybe, but what you're thinking of is I'm not giving these people a 0% interest loan throughout the year that they can use to send money overseas to God knows what country or spend on God knows what here in our country to hurt us. I'm not giving you a multiple $1,000 0% loan throughout the year. Instead, take all of that tax money that you did not pay throughout the year, put it in a small interest-bearing account, put it in a Credit Karma savings account, and get 3% interest throughout the entire year. Keep your savings and then give them the taxes at the end of the year if the IRS still has its head above water. But if you can start feeding the IRS less throughout the year, I suspect that they'll start managing our money better. So step 1, go to your HR department and set your federal tax withholdings to 0. Next step, don't just sit there and stockpile the money. God forbid, don't spend all the money and then be screwed by the IRS at the end of the year. Put it in an interest-bearing account so that you are the beneficiary of your labor and your money. And then at the end of the year, if the IRS is still standing, then pay them the taxes that they are owed, but you keep all of the interest. You get to use your money throughout the year instead of the IRS criminally spending our money to hurt us at the end of the day. It's the tax strike of 2026, and it's time you start educating yourself. Less emotions, more education.
Okay, this is why I say don't believe crap on social media until you check into it, okay? He says go to your HR department, get a new tax deduction form and set it to 0. No, that you're paying more taxes that way. You have to add dependents in order to pay less federal taxes. You can go through online and look up, this is what I pay yearly, grand total gross, how many deductions do I need, so it's at 0. And then it'll tell you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 deductions in order to get it to that point. Okay. The other problem with that is that if somebody does look at that, at the old IRS, and you're not claiming for the rest of your taxes, meaning your deductions on your taxes, that you have this many kids, yes, you're going to get a letter. Can you put 1 or 2 and get away with it? Yeah. Can you put 6 down? No.
If there were a legal exit from the federal income tax system, would you take it? Well, there is. Let's get into it. What most Americans don't realize is that you could have lived 100 years or more and earned $1 billion or more or less and never heard from the IRS if you never filed your taxes. Let me say it again. If you never filed your taxes, you could live 100 years, earn $1 billion. You would never hear from the IRS. I never heard from the IRS in the first 30 years of my life before I filed my taxes. I didn't hear from the IRS until after I filed my taxes. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4 protects us from direct taxes like the federal income tax. Not only Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4, but the Supreme Court of the United States that ruled in 1895 that the federal income tax was unconstitutional. And then people say, well, what about the 16th Amendment? The 16th Amendment is not even valid for this conversation. And here's why. Because the 16th Amendment did not nullify, did not repeal Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4 of the Constitution, which still to this day protects you and protects me from federal income taxes. The entire federal income tax system was designed for the statutory United States, which defined in the tax code includes only the District of Columbia. Those of us in the 50 states were then, are now protected by Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4 of the Constitution. What that tells you is that you never had to file in the first place. I never had to file again. Had you never filed, you could have lived 100 years, earned $1 billion, and you would have never heard from the IRS.
Okay, part of that is true. And I'm going to do the analogy is if you're going to lie, the lie has to start right away, okay? Smart business owners, people in our government know that when you make a switch or you start a company, something along that lines, A, B, C, D, whatever those options are. If you start the lie right away on taxes, it'll just be normal. When a major change happens, that's when they call it the red flag. That's when you start getting letters from the IRS. Now, I assure you that if you're working for an employer who has to hand in your taxes and deduct taxes, that number one, you will be getting a letter from the IRS. Number two, you will get chased down by the state, and the state will come after your paycheck, they will come after your bank account, and they will come after anything that you own. Period, exclamation mark, boom. This is a slippery slope. But once again, I'll explain two things at the end here.
What happens if you just don't pay your taxes to protest the Trump administration? Well, one lawyer is about to find out. Rachel Cohen is an attorney and political organizer in Chicago. She's going viral for announcing that she's not paying her federal income taxes this year, in part because of the building of new ICE detention centers.
I filed my taxes last week and I put the amount that I owe the federal government, about $8,800, in a high yield savings account. Because the government is using my tax dollars to build concentration camps for my neighbors, and so I don't feel like giving them my tax money.
Cohen is actually part of a broader movement of progressives calling for a tax strike as a form of civil disobedience. There's one group called the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee, which gives step-by-step guides for people who don't want their tax dollars going towards things like military spending, for example, which is particularly resonant right now given the US war in Iran. Their website has guides explaining things like how to refuse to pay a percentage of your taxes that is equal to the amount that goes towards military spending, or making it harder for the IRS to collect owed funds. And I know what you're thinking, what about the penalties for not paying taxes? Well, I assure you, so is Cohen.
The failure to pay federal income tax, I took a look at the statute, and most likely the statutory maximum, if convicted, is a year. It's a federal misdemeanor, and they can also assess a $25,000 fine. I asked myself, if in a vacuum, I was confronted with the question of, would I rather give the government $9,000 to put towards building concentration camps or run the risk of being convicted of a federal misdemeanor? I would certainly say I would rather run the risk of being convicted of a federal misdemeanor. And so if I feel that way in a vacuum, I am going to act that way in real life.
Tax resistors are well aware that their actions could have serious consequences, but they do it anyway because, in their view, things have actually gotten that bad. This form of protest is basically an American tradition, from the Boston Tea Party to opponents of slavery like Henry David Thoreau to the Vietnam War, when thousands of Americans refused to pay a 10% tax on phone services that was used to fund the war. The U.S. military's budget this year is a record $901 billion. ICE's budget has surged from $6 billion 10 years ago to $85 billion today. And some American taxpayers are just saying, no, we're not going to pay for that, and we're prepared for the consequences. So what do you think? Is this an effective form of protest?
I want you to note that she is putting that money away. And I guarantee you that when confronted, she will pay that money. Now, if she's an attorney, I would not use her, okay? Now, I appreciate the oomph, but I wouldn't use her at all, you know. And brings me to another point here. You know, cows are basically manufacturers. They manufacture milk. Boy, I tell you, if the government could figure out how to tax that, if it wasn't part of food and farming, they would.
All right, it's time to stop paying federal taxes, and you can do this shit legally. Go to your HR department and tell them to stop withholding federal fucking taxes. There is no reason we should be giving the IRS, the Israeli Revenue Service, our fucking money at 0% every month. Take that money, put it into a high interest savings. It's going to be at 3 or 5%. And then if you choose to, pay that shit at the end of the year. Let's say the end of the year comes and you don't want to pay that shit. Well, you file what you owe, and then you don't send a payment. You will take a penalty of about 1% a month, I believe it is. Anybody can correct me if you want to. That's about 12% a year. And then maybe after years and years and years and years, they might send you a notification saying, okay, we need to settle this shit up, or we're going to start garnishment proceedings. And if tens of millions of people did this, they don't have the capacity to go after everybody, so they're going to go after the big dogs. Woof. Bro, why are we giving them our money, especially right now? And Donald Trump is just going to settle a lawsuit that he sued the United States for $10 billion for releasing his tax records that every president before him has ever done, and it didn't cause him any.
Yeah. So let's break this down here. Not paying your federal taxes due to, Section 1/9, blah, 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 is not exactly what it says, okay? But let's get deeper here. It is being suggested that you do not have to pay federal income taxes, that you can go to your HR department and refill out your tax sheet as exempt. This is a true statement. But in order for that to work, your previous year's taxes, you would have not had to pay any taxes, meaning that your deductions, your taxes were a net zero or negative, okay? If all you're doing is showing up for work and you do not have a business, this theory will not work at all. Exclamation mark. Don't do it. If you want to go to your HR department, refill out your tax deductions and throw in 1, 2, or 3 dependents per se, feel free to do it. It's normal, and there'll be less federal taxes that you will have to pay. But come time for tax filing, you better be in financial shape to be able to pay whatever that you had not paid in, okay? If you're just doing a straight 1040 easy, just don't do it. If you're having something where you're able to get tax deductions, yeah, do it. And you might only have a couple $100 that you might have to pay in. Will it make you feel better that our government didn't have our money the whole year for free? Yes. Are you going to change anything by not paying your taxes? Are you going to stop the wars? Are you going to stop the concentration camps? No. These people don't care about you one bit in the least. They go in, they can't afford a cup of coffee, and they come out millionaires, billionaires from their illegal stock trading, their under-the-table deals, their fake consulting to businesses who pay them millions of dollars to get reelected so they can do favors for them. The country is ran by corporations, not by our government representatives. Now, moving on to the guy that, the infomercial. I looked at that website, and the website just is page after page after page of all kinds of BS that doesn't actually legally show you how to do anything. It just feeds you more BS after more BS after more BS. But if you want to join them for $2,000 a year, well, then they'll show you how to do it. So anyways, once again, don't believe what you see on social media until you check it out yourself. I checked this out myself and knew that doesn't make a difference what happened in 1855 or 1788 or whatever the case may be. You need to pay your taxes for your income. You need to pay your property taxes. And let me take that a step further. All these freedom of travel, yes, you need to have insurance on your vehicle. You need to have a driver's license. You need to have a tag on your vehicle, okay? There is no way around it. You will end up getting pulled over and fined. And in some cases, shot. Till the next time, join the community here. Throw me a like. Do something down there to help spread the word. I'll see you next time.